1, 2, 3, 4. Hey everybody, Gary here with Pow Music, and in this video we're going to take a bunch of classic major scale melodies and riffs, and we're going to give them context by showing how these riffs exist within their underlying scale shapes. So all these riffs are in a key, they're in a major key, they make use of the major scale, and we're going to show how they exist all over the neck and how we can play them in different places. Number 2, some things that I consider and approaches I use when choosing where to play a melody and how to move it around the fretboard. So on guitar we have many options as to where we can play the same thing, which is pretty cool, and we want to explore all those options. The third thing is how to move the entire 5-pattern shape around the fretboard to play in 4 different keys. So in this video we play in the keys of C, G, F, and E, and before each key change we show how to make the transition. So this lesson is about learning riffs and melodies and then contextualizing them within the scale shapes. The next step as far as becoming a great lead player is to take the vocabulary you learn and say it in new ways, to workshop it around the guitar, play it in different areas, change the rhythm, change a few of the notes, add notes, connect phrases with some improvisations, and all of that we go over in my FretLive Fretboard Mastery program, along with how to practice and master the scales and apply patterns, because melodies are often made of patterns. They don't just go straight up and straight down. So by practicing scales with patterns, you're preparing yourself for melodies you're going to encounter and that you're going to think up in your own mind. And a few other things before we get started. So 1, I challenge you to learn one of the melodies in this video by ear, and then figure out the key and the scale shape you're using. So after you do, use my video to compare and contrast my approach with yours and expand on what you figured out. Then record yourself playing it and post the video in the Fretboard Adventures Facebook group linked in the description. That's just my online community where people can share ideas and share videos of things they're learning in the Pow Music content. You could also start with something as simple as Happy Birthday or Frere Jacques or Mary Had a Little Lamb, something really simple if you're new to ear training, instead of these melodies, and follow the same process. You also want to make sure anything you're learning by ear, you hum it first. So when you're trying to learn Happy Birthday, no, the vocalizing will really get it into your head and into your body before you try to find it on the guitar. So definitely something you want to try. Second thing is access a free 17-page PDF of the 5 shapes of the major scale with notes on practicing them, and the link is in the description. The third is to join my FretLive Fretboard Mastery program, from which this lesson goes along with the third of 12 units, which is on the major scale. In this course, the goal is to bring together a deep understanding of how music works on the fretboard with the learning and creating of actual music. So each of the 12 units has a theory lesson, a song lesson, and a creative component. The fourth thing, if you want to support the free content on this channel, you can become a Pow Music patron, and by doing so, access supporting resources for all my YouTube lessons, exclusive patron-only lessons, and live weekly Zoom sessions. For this lesson, you could download a tab PDF and video of all these melodies with the chord diagrams above each measure, so you could also strum along and put the 2 parts together. But remember, use your ear first and use the tab and the diagrams to fill in the blanks of what you can't figure out by ear. Alright, so now I'm going to demonstrate this recipe for lead guitar great success, and then we're going to go more in depth on each of the melodies. So there's a few different ways we could go about learning how to play guitar. One of them is purely by ear. So an extreme example of that would be to give someone a guitar, tell them nothing about music, give them access to all the music in the world, and just say, learn how to play it. Maybe we give them some software to slow it down, to loop little sections, so all they could do is transcribe on the instrument. Trial and error, figure out how to play it on guitar. Now to me, that is actually the ultimate way to play, because the ultimate goal, for me at least, is to have the guitar act like my voice, right? A singer can hear something and just emulate it. Not even a singer, pretty much all of us, right? You're driving in your car, a song comes on, you sing along, right? You didn't have to train your voice to find the notes. You just hear them and you replicate them. So that is the promised land with your instrument to get to that point where the instrument becomes an extension of yourself. So ear training is the only way, it's the only way to get there. So then where does the other side of it come into play, which is learn your scales, learn your arpeggios, learn your theory, learn what the note names are called, learn the intervals. Where does all that come into play? And does that help reach the ultimate goal? That's the biggest thing. Does it help reach the ultimate goal? My answer is yes. How does it help? Well, first of all, most of the music we listen to, the vast majority, follows what we could call rules, but we're better off calling them common practice. Let's just say that. Common practice. We all have agreed on this common practice, which we call diatonic harmony. It's what most songs we hear are in. Even if they change keys and things, they're just going from one key to another or something like that. It's still following this common practice of diatonic harmony. And there's a DNA to that music, which is the diatonic scale and the chords that come from that scale, right? So we have this basic foundational DNA to this music that we listen to. And on top of that, from years and years of listening to music that follows the same common practice of using diatonic harmony and the same patterns over and over, meaning the patterns in the major scale, minor scale, pentatonic scale, from folk songs to classical to pop, jazz, funk, blues, hip hop, R&B and beyond, our ears are already tuned to that framework, to that common practice, whether we realize it or not. So it's not a box as much as it is what in reality we're actually doing and what we're hearing. So now, to greatly expedite the process of removing that time gap between what we hear in our head or in the songs we listen to and our ability to then play it on the guitar, we want to internalize that framework that's already in our ears on the instrument and in our fingers. And that framework is the scales, the keys, the intervals, and the shapes. By knowing them, you're going to improve your intuition on the instrument. And by practicing those things, you'll further improve that framework in your ears as well. So for instance, this melody by Bob Marley perfectly outlines the major scale, the diatonic scale that's being used to create this melody. Not consciously, it's in our head already. But through the process of practicing this scale, and applying patterns to it, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, 5, 6, 7, 6, 7, 1. Naming the intervals: root, major second, root, major third, root fifth, root third, fifth, root fourth, third, second, first, right? Through that process, we're connecting the sounds with the spots on the fretboard, right? At the foundational level, at the level of the scale. So then when we hear a melody that uses this diatonic scale, which most of them do, it becomes easier for us to find the notes. So when I hear da 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 da, I hear 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, 6, 5, 3, 1, 2, 3, 5, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that's the value of working on your scales in a really mindful way and really listening to what you're hearing, identifying what each note in the scale actually is. That's really helpful. But still, until we actually learn melodies and songs, it's just DNA with no life. So we need life. So the songs, the melodies are the life. And we could think of each one of these melodies as vocabulary. So we can take this and we have now a life form within that scale. Bob did these cool little hammer-ons. That becomes part of our vocabulary. Then we could take that melody and play it elsewhere. So we did it here. Then we did it here. And I just added a little walk down the scale as an embellishment. Then we can move it up an octave into the next shape. Up another octave. So step one is learning the melody by ear, naming the key, giving context to where you're playing it. If I'm playing it over here, it's part of this larger scale shape. What if I play it across a single string? Then it's just part of a single string scale shape, right? And it's also good to practice scales on a single string because you get a feel for the actual distance between intervals, right? Because it's along a single string. It's hard to visualize distance going vertical, but you could really visualize distance going horizontal. And then we add these articulations to bring it to life, which you'll also learn by figuring out melodies by ear, trying to emulate singers. So if I go just that, right? Because when we sing, da 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 da, we do that a lot. We don't go da 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 da. We have these and vibrato, backslides, hammer-ons. So many students often say, I learn the notes, but it doesn't sound the same. So when we say someone sounds really musical in their phrasing, I think that's another way of saying they sound really human or really natural, like a singer. And the best way to get that into your playing is to learn beautiful and timeless melodies by ear as performed by a good singer or a very musical player. And to imitate the inflections and the articulations that you hear in their melodies requires adding in dynamics, which is volume, variation in your picking, or legato, meaning connecting notes with hammer-ons and pull-offs or slides, adding vibrato, adding bends. So those details you'll see in the examples later in the video. All right, so let's get into these melodies one at a time. We'll watch and listen to each one first, and then we'll go over it again with some commentary. 1, 2, 3, 4. So with this one, I'm starting in shape 5, known as the G shape. What's great about this shape is that it's where the main pentatonic shape comes from. So if you take out scale degrees 4 and 7, you'll see that main pentatonic scale. I'm adding these slides and hammer-ons and stuff just to give it that more vocal, bluesy quality. And, you know, Bill Withers had lots of those things going on in his voice. Little pentatonic riff right there. Now this melody just walks right up the scale, classic major scale melody. 4, 3, 2, 1. The cool thing is now 1, 2, 3, 7, the leading tone back to 1. So you want to hear that. When you hear that melody, you want to know what that is. Oh, that's just walking right up the scale. And if you can identify that by ear and you know where that is on your fretboard, then that's how you figure it out by ear. So by running your scales, by transcribing and then contextualizing, that all starts to come together. And here I'm taking a more horizontal approach across 2 strings, which really allows you to do a lot of slides and vocal sounds. Classic pentatonic riff. So shape 3, the C shape, is where the second main pattern of the pentatonic scale, what we call pattern 4 of the minor pentatonic, again, if you take out notes 4 and 7, you'll see that. Of course, I'm adding vibrato to make it sound more vocal. That's something you can't practice too much. And those little slide-ins from a half step down, that's really what vocalists do. They slide into notes, so that's something you want to do to get that more vocal quality for sure. All right, so now we're going to go to the key of G. So we're just going to slide this entire master shape down so that the ones are on the note G, such as on the low E string 3rd fret or on the 5th fret of the D string. Wherever you see a 1, now instead of on a C, it's on a G. And that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's a super classic major scale riff from Bob Marley, and he makes use of this open G major scale, position 5, doing these fast hammer-ons from the open string to the fretted note, and I call them flams. It's when a drummer hits 2 notes really fast right on top of each other. It almost sounds like one fat note. Dwee, dwee, you know, real fast hammer-ons. Really easy in open position, but now I'm going to try to do it in shape 1. And I use a slide to emulate that sound, but then between 3 and 4, I do that flam. So that's another really vocal sound, because singers, they go da da da, you know, they kind of do that flam with their voice. Going up the octave, this is a really great shape. It's very symmetrical. And some shapes are better than others for certain songs, so you always want to experiment with where you want to play the melody. Now in this highest octave, the 3rd octave, I'm going to go across 2 strings, take a more horizontal approach to really get those slides, but then just descend down the pattern in position. So we always have options, and it's good to explore all of them. 2, 3, 4. So this awesome riff on Wonderful Tonight by Eric Clapton just shows how much emotion and feel a bend can give. So we're just bending up from that 2nd scale degree to the 3rd scale degree. And this is a classic blues pentatonic riff, but then here he goes into that major scale, adding that 4th scale degree. Because the pentatonic scale doesn't have any of those notes that are right next to each other. So if you take out the 4s and the 7s, you have the 5 shapes of the pentatonic scale, both major and minor. And we get into all that theory and scale construction in the Fret Live Fretboard Mastery program. But so now I'm just playing the same riff all over the neck. We have these different areas, and some are better than others. To me, the riff works best in shape 3, right there. That's where it's most comfortable. And this time I'm playing it slightly different, because I'm gonna walk up 1 single string to play the rest. So working on your bends and vibrato, you can never do that too much. Alright, so now we're gonna move back to the key of C. So again, we just slide all the shapes over so that the 1s are now on the note C. So you need to know at least on the E and the A string where there's a C. So for instance, on the 8th fret of the E string, on the 3rd fret of the A string, if you know at least that much, you'll have no problem sliding those shapes around, because 2 of them have a root note on the E string, 2 of them have a root note on the A string, and there's only one outlier with the root on the G string, which is shape 2. If you haven't memorized the fretboard yet, a couple weeks ago I put out a lesson specifically on memorizing the E and the A string with some tips and tricks and memorization drills at the end of that video, so I'll link to that in the description. 1, 2, 3, 4. So Ode to Joy by Beethoven is such a classic, memorable, simple melody. It's like a folk song within classical music. And once you have the sound of this in your head, just try to play it all over the neck as a way to practice putting melody in the different scale shapes. So in this example, I just go from one scale shape to the next. And as with all these, I'm just using my ear and my instincts to play the right notes. Not on every one, I didn't actually get it right every time on the first try. But by workshopping it, it got stronger and stronger, and that's how your instincts develop. You try to play things by ear within the shapes, and then you make a mistake, and you modify your hands, and then you're making an association between the sound and the finger movement and the intervals. So this is a perfect simple melody to work on that process. And then the other thing about this melody is it's very simple, walks up and down the scale, but where it lands implies a chord progression. And how to figure out what chord on what note is something for another lesson. So for the next song, Joy to the World, we go back to the key of G. So we slide the whole shape around so that our ones are now on the note G, 3rd fret of the E string, and then 10th fret on the A string. 2, 3, 4. This is the only melody I know of that does this. 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just goes down the scale, straight down, all the notes. So it's a total classic. It's a great example of that, to just hear the sound of the major scale. This one's much trickier than Ode to Joy. It's faster. And then we have a lot of repeats on the same note, like right there, kind of picking just scale degree 3. Da da do 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 do. And then these big jumps. Da da 1 1. We jump a full octave. So this melody really keeps you on your toes. And then I'm just moving it from one shape to the next. And this is another great one to just kind of practice through the shapes. It requires much more nimble fingers, like I said, than something like Ode to Joy. And a melody like this just really allows you to hear the scale itself, because it does both stepwise motion and skips. And this one's a good example of how not all shapes work equally well. Some of them were definitely more of a challenge to get those skips than others. So you always want to experiment with a melody to figure out where you want to play it. Alright, so now for the awesome Titanic theme, song I've loved since I'm a kid, we're going to move to the key of E and just slide everything down so that the E's are now our root notes and the number ones are on the E's. Alright, here we go. 3, 4. So for this one, I tried to channel my inner Jeff Beck with Celine Dion kind of hybrid approach, and just used a lot of these articulations. So those hammer-on pull-off trills, there's a double stop. There's that flam with another trill. Heavy vibrato. Slide-ins. Then I'm gonna bend up to my target note instead of actually playing it. So there I bent 3 to 4. Slides, flams. Back from the Redemption song. Going below and then back up to the note. So there I play 7 to 1, but now I'm gonna bend 7 to 1. Slow, dramatic bend. Trill, 3, 4, 3, 2. That was a slide trill. We could do hammer-on pull-off trills. Sliding into the note. And now I want to get to the higher octaves, so I'm just going to go up the scale to work my way up. Now I'm 1 octave higher to play the second verse. Bending up to the target note. Big whole step bend, bending from 2 to 3. Sliding in. Now I'm gonna take the scale back down to the root note. Heavy vibrato. Octave jump from 5 to 5. Just like in Joy to the World. Big dramatic bend. Really trying to milk the emotion in this one. Thinking about Jack and what was Kate Winslet's character's name? I forget, but oh man, I saw that movie just as I was starting to get into romance as a young teen. So this intro goes back to the intro here. It's very open to improvisation, which you hear, I think it's on a flute in the intro, so I couldn't help but jam a little bit. And here I'm taking a more across 2 strings horizontal approach. All right, so now we're going to go to the key of F, so we just slide up everything 1 fret. That's it, from E to F, and then we're ready for Hey Jude by the Beatles. 1, 2, 3, 4. So for this one, I had a guitar lesson coming up right after this segment, and I kept this one more basic than the others. I stayed in one shape for the most part, just trying to get the right notes. So just trying to have solid timing and hit the right notes. That's really all you need. And then you'll see a couple spots I hit the wrong note, but then just went right up to the right note and it worked. I'll point that out when it happens. And when you're figuring out a melody, slow it down. When I figure things out by ear, I slow it down. I use either amazing slow downer, YouTube playback speed control, the transpose plugin for Chrome. I loop little sections. So here you're gonna see me hit a wrong note but make it work. I go da 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 da. So I went 3 and then back down to 2 and it worked. The sad song. Hammer-ons, vibrato, get that more vocal quality. Dynamics, you know, paying attention to how much pressure you're using on that pick or with your finger. Slide, start. Better. Now here's the section where I was very unsure, but I made it work. Okay, the next 2 notes, I start on the wrong note. Not yet. Right there. It should have been 4, but I just slid up and it worked. So don't be afraid to make mistakes and just in the moment, work it out. Try again, work it out. Then just a little improv to get back to where I started, up the scale. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. Happy playing, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Before I go, I just want to give a special shout out and thank you to some of my higher level patrons. That includes Andrew Vogel, Arwin Guzen, Cam Chernachon, Chris Dewing, Chris Freeman, Daniel Laranz, Joff Weathermax, Jim McCall, John Hartquist, John Cushman, Joseph McCarthy, Noah Brand, Scott Martinez, Sweetness, Trampus Thompson, Chris Watson, Sean Ellis, and Don Stringham. Thank you guys, and thank you to all the Pow Music patrons for your ongoing support. Happy playing, and I'll see you next time.